We'll be just starting shortly.
यार अनम्यूटेड है। कुछ बोले तो हम करें ना।
I'm really sorry for the delay. I think we're coming from the virtual studio, so we're just having a little bit of technical issue connecting. So kindly bear with us. Thank you.
Fine. Now I can hear at least.
Guys, 2 more minutes and we are about to start now. Just a bit of technical glitch and just 1 or 2 more minutes. We'll be there. Thank you.
Hello and a very warm welcome to our chief guest, Ms. Renu Yadav. Hello and a very warm welcome to our chief guest, Ms. Renu Yadav, First Secretary Person in Charge, Indian Embassy, Bahrain. Guest of honor, Ms. Meera Ravi, owner of Salam Bahrain magazine. And a speaker for the day, Ms. Deepa Chandrasekhar, Senior Vice President, Chief Compliance Officer, and Money Laundering Reporting Officer at United Gulf Bank. And of course, a very warm welcome to each and every member and guest who have taken their time to join in this virtual CPE meeting. It is an honor to address the wonderful audience. And on behalf of the Bahrain chapter of ICAI, I thank you all for giving us your priority. I would like to introduce myself. I'm CA Roanna Miranda, Executive Committee member of BCICAI. Today, I'm especially excited since this is the first and foremost event organized by the women members of BCICAI for the term 2020-2021, thus carrying forward the legacy of the erstwhile team. We assure you that today's session will definitely be enlightening and you will have a lot to take away. Please feel free to enter any questions that you may have during the session in the chat box, which is visible in your control panel. And yes, don't forget, we have a quiz competition coming up at the end of the event with 10,000 commitment points on offer. So to begin today's session, let me first call upon our versatile chairperson, CA Ajay, for a few words. Over to you, CA Ajay.
Thank you, CA Roanna. Respected chief guest of the event, Mrs. Renu Yadav, the First Secretary of the Indian Embassy. Respected guest of honor, Mrs. Meera Ravi. Esteemed speaker of the day, Mrs. Deepa Chandrasekhar. Dear members, invited guests, a good afternoon to you. After a very successful event that we conducted yesterday, I'm very happy to see yet another good turnout for today's event as well. In fact, we received a word of appreciation from His Excellency Piyush Srivastava-ji for the good attendance yesterday. And I am really proud of our members who take the time to attend our events to make it a success. In fact, since the beginning of our events, we have crossed 100 members attending the event consistently. So thank you very much for that. And I'm happy that today will also be another record-breaking day in our history, as this will be the most attended WICAB event ever. Credit for that must go to the efforts of our Secretary, C.A. Sharmila, and her team of WICAB who opened the event to all the members and worked very hard to ensure that the event is well attended. It is only apt that I leave the floor to C.A. Sharmila to propose the welcome address. But before I do that, I really wanted to thank the guests and the speakers for today. Our chief guest for today is Renu ji, who has been one of our regular supporters through the years, who is very approachable and has helped the chapter and its members when we needed assistance, and we are really grateful for her support. It is our honor to have her as the chief guest today. Our guest of honor, Mrs. Meera ji, needs no introduction. and is a well-known person in Bahrain and has been closely involved with some of our marquee events, such as the annual international conference. Of course, she's also part of the BCICI family, as CA Ravi is a long-standing member. In fact, he was part of the founding members of the BCICI. And finally, the speaker of the day, Deepa ji. She's a personal friend, someone who I have known for over a decade and is my go-to person for discussing anything related to compliance, which is my day job. I have heard her presentations on a variety of topics and over the years, and I can definitely vouch for today's session and interesting. Today's topic is also very, I'm eagerly looking forward to that session. Thank you for today's session. Back to you, CA Rowana.
Thank you, CA Ajay, for your very inspiring words. I would now like to call upon CA Sharmila Sheth, Secretary BCICAI, for the welcome address. CA Sharmila, over to you.
Thank you, Rowana. Thanks a lot. Respected Chief Guest, Ms. Renu Yadav, the First Secretary, Indian Embassy of Bahrain, our guest of honor, Mrs. Meera Ravi, the founder, editor, Salam Bahrain magazine, Ms. Deepa Chandrasekharan, Vice President, Compliance Officer and MLRO of UGB Bank, all our members and all the invited guests. I wish to extend a very cheerful welcome to you all. This is the first WICAB event of our term 2020-21, and it's been after a long time, a long break. Normally, the WICAB events are organized by the Women Executive Committee members for the Women CA members of Bahrain. And to extend this time we even have all the dignitaries, our chief guest, our guest of honor, as well as the speaker for today as women as well. However, because this WICAB event, this time is the first WICAB event, and it is being held virtually, so we have decided to extend the invitation to all the CA members as well as the C2A and ICAP Toastmasters Club. Thought for this group, the WICAB group, was instigated way back in 2014-15 by the few women members like CA Subhashri, CA Khushbu, CA Sri Bharati, to name a few. This was done with an intention to give the opportunities to the women CA members who otherwise miss out on attending the events while taking a tough tight walk while juggling between the house work, chorus, the office work, the family commitments. But here I would really thank all our male CA members who actually take upon themselves to do the household chorus while their better half attend the seminars. You guys really live up to a saying which is said, हर कामयाब औरत के पीछे एक मर्द होता है. Our chairperson, CA Ajay Kumar, he has yesterday mentioned honor the 150th birth anniversary. So, and today we have here Ms. Renu Yadav, the First Secretary of Indian Embassy of Bahrain, as a chief guest for the event. Ms. Renuji is always more than happy to assist us in all the logistics which we require with the Indian Embassy. I'm so glad and delighted to have her here. Thank you so much, Renuji. Our guest of honor, Ms. Meera Ravi, the editor, founder of Salam Bahrain magazine. Does really anybody wants her introduction? She is a known figure in Bahrain. She doesn't need any introduction. She is the most humble, most loving, and most sweetest person I have ever met in Bahrain. She didn't even had a second thought when I called her to be the guest of honor for today's event. I'm so happy that she has accepted our invitation and agreed to be here for the session. Our speaker today, Ms. Deepa Chandrasekharan, Vice President, Compliance and MLRO, in UGB Bank. Who better person than her to address us on the concept of crowdfunding, the financial challenges, the frauds, and the ways to mitigate those frauds than her being the compliance officer in the UGB. I would really like to thank Deepaji for taking out time from her busy schedule and agreeing to be the speaker for today's event. Thanks a lot and a warm welcome to you, Deepa. Lastly, all our members, thank you all for joining us and supporting all the WICAB event. I'm very thankful to you and hope you have a very fruitful session. Over to you, Rohana.
Thank you, CA Sharmila, for your illuminating words. Dear attendees, we would now like to invite the guest of honor for the day, Ms. Meera Ravi. Ms. Meera Ravi is the editor of Salam Bahrain, a much-loved Asian diaspora magazine founded 12 years ago. Prior to that, she has worked as Bahrain correspondent for the Gulf News and the Khaliji Times, as well as the news editor and special correspondent for the Bahrain Tribune. She currently writes a fortnightly current affairs column in the local Gulf Daily News, in which she highlights migrant issues regularly. She is a third-gen writer and journalist. In October 2019, Ms. Meera became the only lady journalist from Bahrain's English language press to receive the Prince Khalifa bin Salman Journalism Award from the Prime Minister of Bahrain. She is a very active in cultural circles and organizes many noteworthy programs, concerts, etc. She has served as the president of the Indian Fine Arts Society and also of Surya Bahrain, the local chapter of Surya India, the stage and the film society behind Asia's longest running cultural festival. She is a member of the long-standing Indian Ladies Association. I would now like to invite Ms. Meera Ravi. Over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I would like to thank the Bahrain chapter of the ICAI for inviting me to talk about the Mahatma, and that too in this significant year, the 150th birth anniversary celebrations that are taking place around the world for the whole year. Mrs. Renu Yadav, the first secretary of the Indian Embassy, who's our chief guest today. Mr. Ajay C., the chairperson of the BCI-CAI. Ms. Sharmila Koth, the secretary of the BCI-CAI. All the officials and the listeners of this webinar. Today's topic, as you have been told, is awakening the Mahatma in you. Now, when you hear that topic, it sounds a bit daunting, doesn't it? Is it possible at all? And how relevant is Mahatma Gandhi and his teachings to our 21st century world, especially our pandemic world, where all of us seem to have gone into a sort of universe of our own and seem so cut away from the moral moorings that kept us going? Well, it is a challenge, but it is not impossible to awaken the Mahatma in us. After all, Mahatma Gandhi burnished his teachings as the great NRI himself. It was his expatriate life and his experiences, first in London as a law student in the heart of a trendy set, and later on as a householder fighting injustice in South Africa, that he found the seeds of what was to later become his life philosophy and his political mantra. So yes, indeed, as NRIs, we are not too far off from the Mahatma's original beginnings. And if we search, I do believe that we can look and find within us the seeds of what can be Gandhian values that can guide us in our life. What I would like to do is not go into Gandhian philosophy, because reams, whole libraries have been written about it, movies made about it, political theses written about it, and it's difficult to encompass all that. Maybe what you and I can do is see how we can adapt some of the core principles that the Mahatma used in his life and bring it alive in our lives of today. A sort of Gandhi Giri, if you will, but in a more practical sense. So the very first thing that I feel we should be looking at when we talk about the Mahatma is to understand that you are the center of your universe. Does that sound selfish? Well, not quite, because when we say that, we are taking responsibility for that oft repeated phrase of Gandhian philosophy.
Yadav.
And it is not as easy as it sounds, because you do have to walk a difficult path if you have to lead by example the way the Mahatma did. But that is the first step towards deciding how you're going to lead your life and inspiring others to follow in your path if that is what you want to do. So that would be the first lesson we have to learn to awaken the Mahatma in us. Being the center of our own universe and walking the path that we want others to follow us on. The second thing that we would have to do is make our ideas accessible to everybody. When I was working on putting this presentation together, that was one thing that struck me about the Mahatma's life, that he distilled all his political thoughts, his philosophy, and everything into simplest terms, so that even the villager who hadn't even attended school would be able to understand, and his ideas would resonate with even a child. That is one thing that the Mahatma was very good at, and that was his strategy. And I think that is something that all of us can adapt to, even in this day and age. One example of that actually is his famous Salt March. In 1929, when the Indian National Congress first adopted the call of Purna Swaraj and decided to go all out and start a movement of civil disobedience to press home the point, nobody knew how it had to be done. Civil disobedience has such a ring to it, and to mobilize the entire country to do it would be such a difficult thing. And it's not just about mobilization, you know, it's also about inspiring the people so that they effortlessly followed the idea and absorbed the core of the idea. And Gandhi himself took quite a while to think about how he could do this. And that was when he came up with the idea of the Salt March. As you all know, the backstory of the Salt March, I'm not going to repeat that, but for the purpose of our narrative, I'd like to say that the Salt March excited the imagination of the people. It resonated with everybody because everybody faced that problem. And here was a solution within their grasp, within the grasp of the most ordinary person. And that was what made the Salt March such a success and laid the foundation for future civil disobedience movements for the Mahatmas. So in whatever we do in our lives, we have to make sure that however high flown our idea is, it's got to be accessible to our team members. It's got to be accessible to all the stakeholders whom this idea will affect. And that is one way of transforming Gandhian philosophy into an everyday action that we can all partake in. The third thing that I would like to say is that the Mahatma, and this is something that I feel we all can learn from, the Mahatma never took himself too seriously. There are so many stories of how he was willing to laugh at himself and see a joke when it was even at his expense. And I think that keeps your channels of learning alive. Because when you laugh at yourself, you are admitting a mistake. When you laugh at yourself, you have welcomed a lesson in self-improvement. And it's very important to keep that alive for yourself and to keep your sense of humor intact. Because as they say, birds fly because they take themselves lightly. And that's what the Mahatma did too. The other thing that we can learn in awakening the Mahatma in us is to learn that the path to success will also see failures. There are a lot of times when the Mahatma's movement did not quite pan out the way he wanted to. Of course, the greatest failure, if you could say, was the partition of India, which he fought so much to prevent, and it didn't happen. India was partitioned into two countries, and that was to the eternal regret of the Mahatma and to so many people who fought alongside him. However, what we remember about the Mahatma today is the huge successes that his philosophy gave to us all. The primary one being, of course, the freedom movement of India. And also the sheer honesty with which he approached his life, both personal and private. That is the final lesson that I believe we can learn to awaken the Mahatma in us. Honesty is so important. And I do believe that pandemic or not, whether we are within the four walls of our home or whether we are out there in our office or in a public space, the one thing that we need is honesty and transparency. And the life of the Mahatma, as he himself says in the title of his book, My Experiments with Truth, is the essence of transparency and honesty. These are the lessons we can learn, and by implementing them, I do believe that we can awaken the Mahatma in us all. I wish you all luck, and I'm sure it will be an adventure as we explore the life of this great man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Meera, for your amazing session. You have touched upon several incidences in the Mahatma's life and correlated it to our life today. I'm sure it will be an awakening for our members' lives. In keeping with the September 2020 theme, Awaken the Mahatma in You, our next special speaker is to touch upon the Gandhian principles and how we can make India Atmanirbhar. Ms. Renu Yadav is a career diplomat belonging to the Indian Foreign Services. She holds a master's degree in economics from the Delhi School of Economics. She has worked in different capacities with the Ministry of External Affairs before joining her mission in Cairo, and has been handling various portfolios in the Embassy of India in Bahrain. I would now like to call upon our chief guest, Ms. Renu Yadav, for sharing a few words on the Gandhian principles and how to make India Atmanirbhar.
Thank you. Ms. Meera Ravi, founder, editor, Salam Bahrain magazine. Ms. Deepa Chandrasekhar, Senior Vice President, Chief Compliance Officer, and MLRO, United Gulf Bank. CA Ajay Kumar, Chairperson, Bahrain Chapter of ICAI. CA Shamila Shet, Secretary, ICAI, Bahrain Chapter, and distinguished members of BC ICAI. A very good evening to all of you. First of all, I would like to congratulate the women wing of BCICI for organizing this thoughtful event with a technical session on a very interesting and relevant topic, crowdfunding. At a time when the focus of Government of India is to make India Atmanirbhar, and in this Atmanirbhar venture of our country, SMEs and startups, they play a very key role. And having a deliberation on crowdfunding, it goes a long way in promoting these SMEs and startups. When Ms. Shamila asked me to participate in this event of today's, and share the title of the program, Awaken the Gandhi in You, it made me take a pause and think about it. Mahatma Gandhi, a figure whose thoughts and philosophy is actually a way of life. Mahatma Gandhi, an embodiment of non-violence, truth, and peace. And the teachings and thoughts of Mahatma Gandhi seems more relevant today than ever before, as the world is facing a serious challenge in the form of COVID-19 pandemic. This unprecedented global health crisis has resulted in serious socio-economic disruptions across the world. Undoubtedly, it will have a much more debilitating effect on the poor and most vulnerable in the short to medium term. The post-COVID recovery phase is also going to be long, challenging, and unpredictable. This contemporary context is extremely important in understanding the relevance of Gandhian values and philosophy today. The core values propagated by the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, comprised of truth, non-violence, harmony, morality, and simplicity. In fact, the values of Satya, Ahimsa, and Sarvodaya forms the fundamentals of humanity. Mahatma Gandhi's vision and action encompassed almost every facet of individual and collective life, and he showed everyone the path to communal unity, upliftment of women, importance of education, sanitation, preserving the environment, etc. Today, when the world is passing through a difficult phase, Gandhian principles of harmony, good for all, respect for nature should be the guiding light as we transition to the post-COVID world. These basic human values are inherently present in each and every individual. However, to make them the guiding principles of one's life, one needs to introspect, empathize, think, and act in a committed and coherent manner. That's how we can awaken the Gandhi present in each one of us. One of the principles which I believe in is speak less and do more. Thus, I would like to end my speech by sharing a quote by the Mahatma. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. So make your own destiny based on your positive thoughts and constructive actions. Be the change you wish to see in the world, and it will become a wonderful world to live in. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Ms. Renu Yadav, for reminding us the values that Mahatma Gandhi stood for. And thank you for your motivating words. Crowdfunding. Yes, my friends. What would be the first thing that came to your mind when you hear about crowdfunding? Is it a contribution from small investors to form a big investment for a new venture? And then there will be several questions that come to our mind. Like, what are the benefits of it? What are the pros and cons of it? What is the process of crowdfunding? And various such questions. So without any delay, let us directly dive into our session of crowdfunding, whether it's a boon or a bane. For this, today we have with us Ms. Chandrasekhar. She has joined United Gulf Bank in 2008 and has over 31 years of experience in banking. She holds an MBA degree from the University of Alberta, Canada, and several such professional degrees. Mrs. Chandrasekhar is a frequent speaker at various professional forums and has published several financial articles. Over to you, Ms. Deepa Chandrasekhar.
Ms. Renu Yadav, First Secretary of the Indian Embassy, Bahrain. Mrs. Meera Ravi, Editor of Salam Bahrain and a long-standing friend of mine for over 2 decades. CA Ajay Kumar, Sharmila Sheth, Roanna, and the viewers and participants in today's function. It is my privilege and honor to be with all of you today on a topic which is come into purview, especially after the pandemic has started, when sources of finance are dire and much needed. However, I leave it to you to judge whether crowdfunding is a boon or a bane. So without ado, I will share my screen. Share. Right. How to minimize this? Okay. The agenda for today will take you through the origins of crowdfunding, and we'll then look at various models, an analysis of the advantages and the disadvantages, and finally certain mitigants which will help combat fraud, which we are seeing in crowdfunding today. Mahatma Gandhi lived in an era when there was no computer and when there was no website. However, his success depended on the crowd. The support that he got from the crowd, whether it was the Salt Dundee March, or whether it was the Khadi movement, or the Swadeshi cooperatives which he started. Gandhiji was a socialist, so there was no concept of raising funds at that time, but definitely he worked with crowds to achieve his mission. And going back in time, crowdfunding is supposed to have started in the 1770s, but one of the best examples came with this lady. She stands at the harbor of New York, an epitome of freedom and liberty. She was actually a present given to America from France. The people of France had gifted it to her. But what happened was that the people needed a base. And the American society found that there was no base. Sorry, there's a technical effect here. Anyway, that's where Joseph Pulitzer came in. Pulitzer is more associated with the Pulitzer Prize, and he was a publisher of a paper called The New World. he was the one who started saying that we must raise the money. And so what happened was that Pulitzer launched the appeal, and as a result, many people contributed as little as $1, and they managed to raise $100,000 to make a pedestal for the Statue of Liberty. Fast forward another 100 years, and in 1997 came one of the first recent examples of crowdfunding, when £60,000 was raised for Marillion, a UK group, a music group, which wanted to tour the US. And again, it was their fans who funded their trip across the Atlantic. Artist Share was another portal which was started, whereby lesser known artists could display their work and get an audience. But the name of crowdfunding, or rather the phrase, actually came from a gentleman called Michael Sullivan, who had started a video blog for his projects. His projects never took off, but the phrase which he coined, called crowdfunding, stuck. So going by the definition of crowdfunding, very simply, there are three parties involved. There are the investors, i.e. the lenders. There are the businesses who want to raise funds, which are borrowers. And there is an intermediary, which could be a website. So individuals, donors, cash, multiplied by a whole crowd of donors, ends up with the funds raised for the project. And certain initial crowdfunding sites which were popular are Just Giving, Lending Club, and going forward, certain equity crowdfunding platforms. Cedars was there, Circle Up, Indiegogo. So these are some popular crowdfunding sites. However, the crowdfunding is nothing new. I mean, many in the subcontinent are familiar with the concept of chit funds, where a group of people contribute monthly, and then the pot or the chit is drawn, and it's a rotating savings and credit association. Each member of the chit gets the entire pot of money at any point in time, as per the roster of whenever the chit is called. The Chinese, especially the immigrant Chinese in America, also had the Hugh Finance. And in this particular case, what happened was a respected member of the Chinese local population used to run the Hugh. He was the one who chose members. He was the one who ensured that everything was up and running, and that there was no issues involved in raising finance and distributing it out. Okay. No, I can't see the slide. Okay. Certain facts of crowdfunding. Almost 17.2 billion is generated yearly through crowdfunding in North America. And this has become so popular that it is projected to grow to almost 300 billion by the year 2030. When I started putting through this presentation, it was a revelation to me itself, because almost of the country which had the largest number of crowdfunding programs which was run, it was China, which was at the top, followed closely by America, UK, Australia, Korea, and then of course, Canada. And you've got France, Germany, and Japan. So the top 10 crowdfunding nations put together almost 99.5% of the entire crowdfunding programs. So I now come to my first poll question, which I throw out to the audience. So the question is crowdfunding a legitimate way for people in need to get help, especially when they lack insurance or credit worthiness? So I'm going to start the poll now, and let's wait for your responses. We wait to see what you all share. People say it's 66% agree, 31% of you have said it's neutral, and 3% of you have disagreed. Okay, that's interesting. But again, the people who have voted for 66% obviously feel that it's a boon. So that's part of the presentation. Is it a boon or a bane? So moving forward, let's now keep this in mind and move to the next slide. To the models of crowdfunding. Okay. There are 4 different types of crowdfunding which I would like to share. One is the financial parts, and the second one would be the rewards part. Okay. Some of them are community-based, and some of them are based on the concept of financial return. So the donation-based and the rewards-based program are those which are community-based, whereas peer-to-peer lending and peer-to-peer investment is more financial-based in nature. So what I've put up on this slide are certain examples of crowdfunding. In the donation model, which is most suited for the charity or the health and social work, you have examples like GoFundMe and the very popular Just Giving. On a rewards-based program, which involves funds raised for a particular project, a film, entertainment, or some new product which is being launched at a small scale, it's Indiegogo and Kickstarter. The loan-based are more, and the investment-based are more for the sophisticated or accredited investors, as they call it. And that involves retail and wholesale, manufacturing and engineering. Examples of these are funding circles and assets capital. And the investment-based crowdfunding model, which is more to do with equity being raised, are examples of these are Seeders and the Crowdcube. We also spoke about chit funds and the Huey Finance, but these are exempt. I haven't included them in any of these. So let's look at the donation-based model. And as I said, this is from the Just Giving website. No return is expected, and there's a 0% platform fee. The nice part about it is that it appeals to your sense of where you want to give. Is it a business? Is it for family which is in need? Is it for a sports project? Is it for travel? Is it for faith? You can choose, and with a few clicks, you can search for projects which are on that particular website and donate as you want. We now move on to the prepayment or the rewards-based model. Typically, this is a non-financial return. And it will, in lieu of the money which has been crowdsourced, the project owner decides to give the product, computer games, or a particular perfume which is being launched, or in a small scale, maybe a mouse or some new stationery. So this is the prepayment model, in which case there's no financial return, but there's definitely a reward or a gift which is being given. Examples of these are whether you would be interested in travel or in some kind of a return. And we now move on to the loan-based model, which is peer-to-peer lending. Now, consumers do give money in return for interest payments. So it's literally in small amounts, you can lend for the project. You will get an EMI every month. You will get, not pay, because you're lending the money. And in some cases, no interest is levied. In some cases, the project owner is the borrower and the project investor is the lender. The project timing date is mentioned, whether it's launching soon or just ending soon. So this is the loan-based model. And an example of this is the assets capital, where the person has the choice of either lending for commercial mortgages or for secured SME term loans or for bridging finance or residential refurbishment. The nice part about loan-based crowdfunding, this is from the Assets Capital website, and just look at it. I mean, just one website in 2019, they originated something like 252 million of loans, sterling of loans. The interest rate is 7.2% on an average, which if you ask any SME person, borrower would say that is lower than the 10% which he normally pays for raising finance. The actual default rate is 1.5%. And look at the expected default rate, which came from the projected losses. This is based on the historical probability of default. In reality, the actual default was 1.5% vis-a-vis 7.4%. And the loans realized or written off is as a percentage of whatever has been repaid. So out of 252 million, which was raised in that particular year, 14% was closed, either in terms of being paid back or in a very small case, the 1.5% being written off. So this is the loan-based crowdfunding. Now, the variance, this is quite popular because lenders can be matched with borrowers according to the returns that are sought. Lenders can allocate funds according to risk categories. There are certain websites which rate the categories of the projects which are on offer. It could be rated A for something with a sound financial background, and it could be C or a B+ for projects which have inherent risk. There's also auction-based crowdfunding where lenders themselves bid to be able to offer the lowest interest rate to the borrower. This is very popular, for example, if there are several lenders lending to a project in which they believe in. And other variants include syndications. We now move on to the fourth, which is the investment-based model, where consumers invest directly or indirectly into businesses. Think of it as an investment in equity, which is shares, bonds, or debentures. Now, if the target is met, there can be additional equity or debentures which can be issued. So typically, much larger amounts are raised, and the catch in this particular based model is that restrictions are there on acceptance of accredited investors only. An example of this was someone who came up with a green hose in order to put petrol into the tanks. So look at it this way. I mean, almost 17,000 pounds was raised, was wanted, and 1 out of 1.4. Another variant of this is the Sharia inclusion, which is very popular in this part of the world. Now, in Dubai, in the DIFC, there is a company called Beehive, which has worked with prominent Islamic legal advisors and the finance industry experts to develop crowdfunding based on the principles of Sharia. So in this particular case, borrowers can do business funding or invoice financing or something which is completely Sharia. And Beehive has been one of the most successful projects within the DIFC. The customer has the basis. Remember, we said that in the investment-based model or the debt model, a person could choose on the basis of tenor. So in this particular case, they can choose up to 24 months or up to 36 months. And they can choose by risk category, whether they want to put 50% or 100% into A+ rated projects. There could be a diversification if they wanted a higher interest rates, because typically look at the interest rates which a person gets. This is from the perspective of an investor. If it's an A+ project for 12 months, the investor on an average Beehive model has made 6%. And when you compare it with the fixed deposit rates, which are on offer, which are 1.5% to 2%, there's no doubt that 6.5% is a pretty decent return, especially in this age. Now, if the person is willing to take more risk, then it would go up to 8% for 24 months or 9% for 36 months. Everything is backed by collateral in the Beehive website, every project. There could be post-dated checks for each monthly installment. There could be an unrated security check for the full month and a personal or corporate guarantee. Having said that, there are times when there would be defaults, no doubt, in which case people do not get their monthly installment, but that's part of the risk. We now move on to the benefits of crowdfunding. Now look at it from an issuer's perspective. Issuer meaning the borrower, the speed. Now anyone who goes into a bank, especially if the person is running a small or medium-term enterprise, knows that it takes time because he has to produce a lot of documentation, and that takes time to raise funds. There is accessibility, so speed is a big advantage for the issuer. In terms of accessibility, there's a wider network of individual investors. Like sitting in Bahrain, one could invest in a project which is up and running in the UAE through the Beehive website. The SME person, borrower, has typically a much lower cost of funds. And as I mentioned before, there's less bureaucracy and less onerous documentation. There's also partial validation of the idea behind the enterprise, because think of it this way. Suppose the project owner or the borrower in this case is able to raise money successfully through the crowd platform. What it basically means is that there is demand for the product, or there is demand for whatever it is that he's going to launch. There's also a powerful marketing tool because there can be synergies with social media. So this way, the word is spread out and funds can be raised. And especially during COVID, the time of COVID, the British government itself has done a big, fantastic job in terms of funding small businesses and in reality, underwrite some loans. Lenders have been able to access funds without making any payment for 12 months. This is basically to boost the local economy. Now, from an investor's perspective, as I mentioned before, there are personal causes. The person can give his funds to whatever he believes in. It could be real estate, or it could be donations or personal causes. There's the potential for higher returns. Remember the slide where we saw where on an average for an A+ rated investment for 12 months, the investor was projected to get something like 6.5%. That's obviously much higher than bank deposits. Geographical access is another one. And portfolio diversification. This is the biggest one because one can invest small amounts in several projects. Another very big advantage from the investor's perspective is that as little as $10 can be invested. And when I was doing research for this, I actually logged on to the Beehive website and invested 500 dirhams, which is 50 dinars, in 3 or 4 projects. And all of them have been repaying so far, and on an average, it's been 8%. Now, I can't think of any other bank-related or financial institution scheme where as small an amount of $10 can be accepted. Normally, if one is investing in equity or investing in a debt or bond, the amounts are typically much, much larger. The investor has the ability to keep tabs on development because the website portal gives a status report on the project, how it has been, how much has been financed, how it has been performing. There's much lower bureaucracy because you're not dependent on someone else to give you the loans. And there's also an initiative, especially in the donation-based model, one can give back to society without actually having to write out checks or logging in to do a bank transfer. So a few click of the buttons and it's done. However, if you look at the presentation title, is it a boon or a bane? Till now, we have touched on the boon aspects, the advantages, the pros, but everything has 2 sides of the coin. So the next set of slides which we will be going through involves the typologies of fraud. And that is the different types called the different types of fraud which are there. Now, academic research has divided this into about 6 or 7 different parts. Preempted fraud is when a crowdfunding campaign itself is shut down much before any funds are exchanged. And how does this happen? It's through tip-offs which come from the social media and from the people themselves. For example, there could observation and monitoring is done by members of the website based on suspicious or unusual discussions that they witness on various public forums or social media sites. The platform hence gets wind of this and is tipped off, so to speak, and shuts the site down before the campaign launches. We then have a stillborn fraud, where a campaign is filtered out and dismissed by the platform itself before it is launched due to certain inconsistencies which are noticed. For example, they may be promoting a product somewhere in the Middle East, but in reality, the portal comes to know that the bank account is maintained somewhere outside the Middle East. So if there are suspicions, then the platform, then the website or person himself dismisses it. There's also the attempted fraud, and this occurs when a crowdfunding campaign utilizes an IP address that does not belong to them. So let's say that there's a project owner who's raising a website, who's raising money for his project, but all the money and all the link given is of another IP address, not belonging to the project owner. There's perceived fraud in when delays in perks and rewards are made. In some cases, the products are not at all delivered. We then also have a backer fraud, where a contributor, a donor, or investor has committed to funding a campaign with the intent of withholding those funds and not paying back. Now, this is serious fraud because the intention itself is wrong. The project owner has no intention of repaying the funds and feels that, because people are investing small amounts, the crowd can be fooled. This is serious. And the last category is the broker portal fraud. And this occurs where the crowdfunding platform operators themselves are involved. They are hand in glove, so to speak, with the borrowers and raise the money and have no intention of repaying the money. So let's look at physical examples which have occurred through the 4 different models which we had mentioned earlier. Through the donation model, crowdfunding campaigns are launched, and there's a certain collusion whereby third-party donors are enticed to contribute for something, and with no intention of the money reaching or being put to the actual use. It limits, however, I must point out here, this is mainly the potential for fraud is much lower because in donations, typically people donate only about $100 to $200, at least in the Western world. And an example of this was a GoFundMe campaign, which was launched earlier this year. 400,000 was raised for a homeless veteran who they spun out a sob story. And in reality, the money which was raised online was used for personal expenses. Imagine a BMW, and 140,000 GoFundMe donors were swindled out. So despite the due diligence which is being done by the intermediaries, which is the web portal, sometimes campaigns do go wrong. Another case was when somebody launched funds, the amount here was lower. He put out a sob story that his 13-week-old puppy had been injured and that he had no funds to take the puppy to the vet. Obviously, a lot of pet lovers out there showed up, sent in money up to 14,000, but it turned out that there was absolutely no car accident. The next type of fraud involving the rewards model, this is simple. We talked about it earlier, and this was when this fell into the category of perceived fraud. And when I say what you see is not what you get, that is what WYSINWVG stands for. What you see is not what you get. There's no reward, there's no service or product which is delivered against the funds raised. The project timings are mentioned, but time elapses, goes by, and still no product is received. An example of this is the iBackpack. Now, when this was launched on Indiegogo, it was a perfect investment. It was as if it was a backpack. Actually, the concept is interesting. It's a backpack with a built-in charger for the iPhone or your iPad or your MacBook. So you could charge your phone on the go. So in principle, it looked excellent. It would also automatically connect to Wi-Fi or hotspots. And the project was, the campaign was very, very successful. It raised more than 720,000. There were YouTube videos which kept promoting it, showed how well funds had been raised. But in reality, the project campaign was pulled down one day. The people behind the project vanished, and people lost $720,000. So this was the case of the iBackpack, which was never delivered. Yet another case, this came on Kickstarter, and it was supposed to be the world's thinnest watch. Delay after delay plagued the watch, and the company struggled to find the kind of technology. So in this case, what happened was they launched the project without having the technology in place. Very poor timing. But again, people who invested in it never received what they got. We now move on to fraud through the loan model. An example of this is when, we looked at funding, we talked about funding circle. In such cases, what happens is that the loan model doesn't work out and people are unable to get their funds, either due to poor choices made by the product or because the product just didn't work out. Or this is more, think of it more as a credit fraud where the project owner promised more returns when in reality he knew it could never work. Now we take the case of the funding circle, which was a firm in the UK which used to offer loans to crowdfunding campaigns. At the beginning of the year, they started blaming the predictive model. Then they laid the blame on recession or Brexit. And what happened was it was discovered that there were changes in credit policy around 2016 when Funding Circle was going to launch an IPO. So they wanted to show higher numbers, and instead of doing proper due diligence on the underlying projects, what they did was they changed their mix of loans so that it was skewed more towards higher risk applicants. They changed the risk thresholds and raised a whole lot of loans, thereby generating more fees. Funding Circle share price tanked, as we will see in the next slide, but they were saved by the fact that the UK government gave a lot of support post-COVID, because the tagline was, if you're a limited company and have a loan with us already, you could apply for a bounce back loan of 2,000 to 5,000. So if you can just see how the share price of Funding Circle moved. It was steadily decreasing until March 2020. And then when the government of UK stepped in and promised to give funding and support small and medium-term enterprises, suddenly some of their non-performing loans became performing and their share price rose. The last part about the investment model raised fraud, what happens is an investor who invests through the equity crowdfunding has an expectation of some return or on his investment in the future. Obviously but because otherwise he would never even invest in it in the first place. But in this case, what happens is there are misleading statements of product performance or a commingling of portal and investor money, whereby the returns are much lower than what was actually promised. So we then move on to the next part, and commingling of funds brings me through the money laundering aspect. Crowdfunding campaigns have been used in the past for laundering proceeds. And some of us who are familiar with money laundering and fraud, we know that there are 3 stages of money laundering. There's a placement stage, the layering stage, and the integration stage. So how does this work? For example, let's take a fake investor who's looking to purchase drugs in bulk. He could crowdfund a fake company owned by a drug cartel, and which is launched on a spurious or a not so ethical website which acts as the intermediary. The fake project sponsor would receive the funds electronically, disguised as a legitimate crowdfunding transaction. And that makes it easier for him to integrate it with the system. And the commingling of funds with genuine business means that the drugs in bulk, the payment came through the website, and in reality, what was happening at the back was drug money. And then there's also cases of terrorism financing. This one caught my eye, because look at it carefully. And this example happened, this fraud happened as recent as last month. In August 13, it was the Justice Department. One portal was raising money for the jihad and for the mujahideen in Syria, and just look which way they were accepting funds. They had put in a Bitcoin address. So to disguise the source of funds, to disguise the origin of funds, Bitcoin addresses were provided, and the Justice Department of the US seized millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency from terrorist organizations. And they shut down more than 300 cryptocurrency accounts, as well as several websites and Facebook pages. Apparently, it was revealed by them much later on that these websites and Facebook pages were set up by members of Al-Qaeda, the Daesh, and the military wing of Hamas. So money launderers have now gone one step further. Instead of setting up, bringing in loads of cash, or fake companies, setting up fake companies, they have now started going onto crypto. So I now go on to poll question 2, which I will throw open right now, whereby I now would like to ask the crowd of you participants. I see that there are about 80 of you on there. Does the crowd do an effective job of preventing fraud and abuse? The next one, please. The second one. Okay. Sorry. End polling. Okay. We now see, right. These are, I've relaunched the same question earlier. And now, we had 50% in the past where people felt that it was a legitimate way for people in need to get help, especially when they lacked insurance or creditworthiness. Now I find that the percentage has come down to less than 50%. So it just shows that there are two ways to, there is boon and there is a bane, okay? We now move on to the mitigants, okay? Okay. 1 minute, please. Okay. Where's this show now? Which one? This one? We now move to the last section of the presentation, which involves the mitigants to help combat crowdfunding. So is it all doom and gloom over there? Is crowdfunding really bad, or is it good? Well, there are certain mitigants over here. What you can do is for investors to read the fine print. And what they can do is, the first line of defense is contact the page owner directly with any concerns. For the second line of defense, contact the platform and diversify into a portfolio of investments. The principles of risk appetite and risk tolerance exist while committing larger amounts. For the participants in the ecosystem, there has to be an appropriate framework of crowdfunding businesses which are launched. And recently, there have been regulators have stepped into this portal. What happens is that there are there are regulators, there are portal operators, they are people who look at KYC and performance and make the rules. The next process also involves risk governance, covering certain areas. The DIFC has come out with certain rules. The Central Bank of Bahrain has come out with certain rules. And all of these will go a long way in trying to throw out those spurious websites which we feel are giving crowdfunding a bad name. There are a lot of benefits, no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, but it's up to you to make the right choice and to do your own due diligence before you put in your hard-earned money. Going forward, the way I see it, and this is more of my thoughts on this, just like we have AML due diligence, just like we have the banks have to find out where the money is going, what is the source of funds, and what are the uses of funds. Slowly, what will happen is there will certainly be an increase in undercover investigations by law enforcement and regulatory agencies. Payment card processors will be co-opted. Cryptocurrency websites will be co-opted, and there will be an enhanced focus on information sharing between all the players in the ecosystem. This is what I have to say. Thank you for your patience. And again, there have been 1 or 2 slides which have gone awry, or we've had some technical issues, but thank you once again for being with us today. And I'm now open to any observations which you might have. Some of the questions one of the questions is there any KYC requirement for those who invest through crowdfunding? The answer, Mr. Mani, is yes. If you are going through the through regulated agencies, through like Beehive, definitely there is a KYC process. They do not allow anyone and everyone to invest. They do a due diligence, and it doesn't matter if you're in an overseas jurisdiction. They do the KYC through video conferencing, whereby with Zoom you hold up your CPR, your passport, and then you can look at it. Another question: is there any agency similar to rating agencies who review the intermediary of the business model? Excellent question. It is it's the intermediary or the web portal itself, the agencies which do their own risk rating. They have a whole bunch of risk analysts who look at cash flows, analyze balance sheets, and they are the ones who assign the risk rating on which you can diversify your portfolio. How does one really know as to which project is actually genuine before investing? This comes back to my question, sir, as to, or rather my plea, saying when you do donations, please go through websites which are tried and tested. Nowadays with social media, it's easy for you to get reviews of the portal. So for example, a Just Giving, people who have donated through Just Giving have always told me that money has reached where they did give their, put in their money. Another one.
Okay, can I read the question for you?
Yes.
Okay. So the next question is from Mr. Vistap Supariwala. He wants to know, how does one really know as to which project is actually genuine before investing? Right. And this comes back to the intermediary or the website portal. What they do is, there has to be transparency. So normally projects which are crowdsourced, the project owner puts up financials, the cash flow, the balance sheet, the net income statement. And this gives the investor a chance to review the feasibility of the project before he puts in his money. Okay. Similarly, Vistap Supariwala has again asked, would investors be called angel investors, sharks of Shark Tanks? Right. It all depends on whether you consider it as a boon or a bane. Let's come back to the exact example.
Angel investors, this typically happens in the equity investment model where large amounts are put in. And for sharks, yes, if you're unfortunate enough to have your money looted by unethical project sponsors, then definitely it would be a shark.
Okay. CA Garvita Srivastava asks, for the platforms created on social media on crowdfunding, is there any review for genuinity of such platforms?
Look, I'm not a very active user on social media, but there's one thing I can say from looking at, Instagram and Facebook. If a project is not going the way it is supposed to be going, or if they find certain flaws with it, trust me, there are enough of people in the social media who will give a backlash and straight away pull the people to task. And I personally feel social media nowadays has become such a powerful tool that justice is automatically rendered without much undue delay.
Okay. The next question from CA Jonathan is, given the amount of vetting to be done by the portal, is the documentation for the issuer really that much lesser than through normal financing institutions?
Whatever research I have read indicates that it is a fact. And another thing must be remembered. One, why do small and medium-term enterprises ask for crowdfunding? Why do they turn to crowdfunding? It is because they are being denied financing by the financial institutions. So this is another conduit for them to make their dreams come true. And also, it's been proved through academic research that they are able to raise funds at a much lower rate than what they would have to pay if they went in through traditional financial institutions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the next question is from CA Nath. How can the regulators protect the investors' hard-earned money?
Right, this is a good one. How do the regulators do it? If I will talk about the DIFC, the Central Bank of the UAE, and the Central Bank of Bahrain. The crowdfunding intermediaries, or the operators as they are known, they are licensed by the regulator. Now, the licensing process itself is quite an onerous one. They look at they obviously is a due diligence done by the promoters. They do have policies and procedures which they vet through, and only then is a license given. So it's not a very simple process where, an intermediary comes in, at least in regulated jurisdictions, and gets the license tomorrow. No, there's a lot of personal work and documentation which is done. And they can also stipulate that the money has to be in an escrow account until such time as the project is launched. Another variant which I've seen is that the money lies in escrow, and only in stages is it distributed from the escrow to the actual project launcher.
Okay. The next question is from CA Sushil Jain. Success or failure, if crowdfunding always depends on the success or failure of underlying business and environment. Therefore, CAs have to do their own due diligence before investing. So I think, yeah, this is not a question, but yeah.
It's an observation which is very true. And thank you, CA Sushil, for this observation. Yes, not only CAs, anybody who's an investor must do their own due diligence before investing. Look, if it's in the case of a donations, and you're putting in maybe 10 BD or 5 BD, there is not that much. I mean, it's a passionate cause and it's your way of giving back to society. But definitely if you're investing in any of the other models, which is the reward-based or the loan-based or the investment-based, a little bit of due diligence will go a long way.
Okay. One question from Chinmoy Chatterjee is, don't we need a special licensing to generate funds in Bahrain? Can a group of persons with a business ideology, can they generate crowdfunding in Bahrain?
Again, in my response to this is it formal or informal? Are you willing to take your risk of everything being, of your hard-earned money being lost? I'm sure, like, you know, we spoke about the chit funds. We spoke about the Chinese informal sources. It still happens in Bahrain. I mean, especially in the labor class, we hear of chit funds being launched. But obviously, if it's a project or it's larger amounts are involved, I would urge that you go through sites like Beehive or other regulated zones where there are projects where there is some kind of due diligence done by the regulator, by the intermediary, and by the project owner himself.
Okay. CA Mani Lakshmana Murthy asks, what type of license and rule book volume of CBB is applicable for crowdfunding? Is there any crowdfunding that happens out of Bahrain?
Yes, there are crowdfunding institutions which have happened in Bahrain. And if the gentleman will share his email with you, Roanna, I'd be quite happy to direct him to the exact section of the rule book. They came out with it recently. It's a whole chapter in the financial crime module. It's in volume 1, it's called FC. In volume 6, it's AML. Let's not get into the technical angle, but if the gentleman will share his email, I'd be more than happy to send the link.
Sure. Okay. One question is, how would the taxation issue be handled considering project could be in one part of the world and the investor be in another part of the world?
Very, very, very good question. And definitely it depends on the jurisdiction of taxation. Obviously, if capital gains or, first of all, let's look at the amounts involved. If it's a very small amount, then taxation is not a big issue. But definitely if it's in the equity-based model where larger amounts are involved, then what happens is that obviously you will have to show an income in the return. And again, the tax which falls on that income depends on the jurisdiction where the person is resident in.
Correct. Okay. The next question again from CA Mani is, how counterparty credit risk is addressed in the crowdfunding model, particularly loan-based and investment-based? Is there any example for the default by the intermediary?
The default of the intermediary, again, yes, they do calculate it. And I don't know whether I can log into the Beehive site to show this to him, but the probability of default is worked out by the portal in more regulated areas. Definitely, I'm familiar with the UAE one. And what they've done, what is nice about it is that they assign risk ratings based on cash flow and the due diligence. And that enables the investor to actually compare projects with the same assigned rating and choose those which offer a higher return. So it all is the risk return weightage ratio.
Okay. So the last question that we take for today is from Mr. Hari. He asks, when the chit funds are operated in Bahrain, why the regulators are not taking any action to curb it?
Okay. This is unfortunate because typically, one of the basic premises is that no one is allowed to extend a loan or do any form of informal financing unless one is a regulated institution. Many times these happen within a room or this happens within a company and the regulators are not even aware of it. Only when something goes wrong does it come into the limelight. And then by that time it's too late because the person has fled the country or the person is just not in a position to repay.
Okay.
So it's a question of coming to know about it.
Correct. So with this, we come to an end to our session. Thank you very much, Ms. Deepa Chandrasekhar, for taking out your precious time and coming to address our members. I'm sure crowdfunding has given all of us a lot of food for thought. And especially during these pandemic times where, people have been losing their jobs and they want to start their own businesses, I'm sure this crowdfunding might be of use to you all. So thank you once again, Ms. Deepa. And with this, I now move to the vote of thanks. CA Margaretha Wali will be giving the vote of thanks. So over to you, CA Margaretha Wali.
Thank you, Roanna. As John F. Kennedy has rightly said, we must find time to stop and thank people who make a difference in our lives. I feel very honored and privileged to propose this vote of thanks for this wonderful event. Thank you, our chief guest, Ms. Renu Yadav, First Secretary to the Indian Embassy in Bahrain, for your valuable time and the amazing ideas you shared with us today. It's a very short and sweet message. Um, Speak less and do more. Thank you, our guest of honor, Ms. Meera Ravi, for your graceful presence and support to our BCICAI and WICAB, not only for this event, but many key events throughout BCICA's journey. We thank our speaker for today, Ms. Deepa Chandrasekhar. Ma'am, that was an outstanding presentation. And of course, we learned a lot of things from you regarding the origins, models, what are the advantages and disadvantages, and what are the mitigants, risks involved of many and many other such things on crowdfunding. There is a quote by G.K. Chesterton, which I keep in my memories always. I quote, "When it comes to life, the critical thing is whether you take things for granted or take them with gratitude. That makes all the difference." So I always remember this quote whenever there is an event organized by the BCICAI and their women's wing, the WICAB. Our sincere thanks to the organizing team for putting together such a great show, a great session, events after events. We thank Roanna, our moderator for the day, for the excellent moderation you did and take throughout the session. We are thankful to all the distinguished guests here who took out their valuable time and chose to be with us here today. Finally, any event, however greatly planned or organized or executed, wouldn't become so successful without the active participation of you, the members of BCICAI. Our gratitude and sincere thanks to you all for the inspiration to the EXCOM to deliver better events and for your continuous support. Once again, we thank each and every one of you for your participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CA Magrathavali. We now move to our quiz section. I'm sure the members must be now aware of how the quiz works. Either you go to www.kahoot or you can download the app on your mobile, and we will be putting the questions in front of you, and you from your mobile have to give the right answers. So with this, I will share my screen.
Rowana? Hello, Rowana. I think I just wanted to clarify that this is only for the WICAB members.
I'm sharing my screen. Just a minute. Okay. So can you see my screen? I have launched the I want to share. So to continue with our session, now I I'm currently sharing my screen. I hope you all can see the game number. You all have to enter the game number 1957486. So members, we'll give you 5 minutes of time.
Please write your membership number also, please. This is only for lady members, and please write your membership number when you're signing in. If you have not signed, type the number. Please exit and could log in again.
Yes. So these are, once again, these are only for the BCICAI members for earning commitment points up to 10,000. We are waiting for the players to join in. We wait for 5 more minutes. Okay, so I guess now we will start. There are no more attendants. Okay, one more player we have. Okay, with this, then I start the quiz.
I repeat again, it is only for the WICAB members. So if there are any other male members, please exit. Thank you.
Which of the following is not a main key player in crowdfunding model? Project initiator, regulator, donor, or intermediary? Okay, so regulator is the right answer. Only 3 people have managed to get it. Anyways, next we'll move to who is, yeah, Miss Shubhashri, I think. Nisha is second and Shri Bharati third. Okay, very well. Let's move to the next. In which type of crowdfunding does a backer expect some form of non-financial return? Investment based, donation based, reward based, or loan based? Okay, so 5 of you all have got it right. Let's see who is on the scoreboard. Okay, there are rapid changes. Subhashri is on top. Nisha is second. Vatsala third. Okay, let's move to the next question. Dash loan-based model facilitates the lending of money while bypassing financial institutions. Is it peer-to-peer lending, debt lending, interest lending, or bypass lending? Okay, it's peer-to-peer, the highest number. Yeah, Good. 7 have got it right. Let's see who is leading the board. Subhashri again and Nisha and this 128934. I'm sorry to say, but if you have not mentioned your name, maybe you will not be qualifying for the commitment points. Anyways, next we move forward. Which crowdfunding model is associated with larger amounts of capitals raised? Is it donation based, investment based, reward based, or loan based? Okay, 5 have got, yes, investment based is the crowdfunding model which is associated with larger amounts of capitals to be raised. So the leader is Subhashri, as she has like been a male leader and I don't think anyone is close to her. Okay, Khushbu is there and Nisha is there. Okay, all the very best. You'll still have questions to come. The board can change. Which of the following is a benefit of crowdfunding for issuers? Small investment amounts, potential for higher returns, portfolio diversification, or lower costs of fund? Lower cost of fund. Yeah, almost everyone has got it right. So let's see the scoreboard. CA Shubhashri, Khushbu has moved up and Nisha third. Okay, good, going. Okay, the promoters of crowdfunding campaign aim to make pain relieving thermal vest but never delivered. This is a perceived fraud, attempted fraud, broker or portal fraud, or a stillborn fraud. Okay, so the answer is perceived fraud. Only one has got it correct. Okay, let's see the scoreboard. Oh, Garvita is slowly moving up. Subhashri is on top, Khushbu and Nisha. Okay, the next question. A campaign removed from crowdfunding portal prior to the launch due to the suspected money laundering is an example of perceived fraud, attempted fraud, broker or portal fraud, or stillborn fraud. Okay, so stillborn fraud is the answer because the campaign was removed prior to the launch. So, it wasn't yet launched. So only 3 have managed to get it correct. Let's see the leaderboard. Subhashri is on top, Khushbu second, and Nisha the third. Maggie and Shri Bharti, you'll have to catch up with the next 2 questions. Miss Meera Ravi is the editor of which magazine? Gulf Insider, Hello Bahrain, Fact Bahrain, or Salam Bahrain? Okay, all have got it correct. Moving to the last. Okay, let's see the scoreboard. Subhashri on top, Khushbu second, and Nisha third. Okay, moving to the last question for the day. Give the date of Mahatma Gandhi's 150th birth anniversary. Is it 2nd October 1969, 30th January 2020, 2nd October 2019, or 2nd October 2020? This is a little tricky question. It is 2nd October 2019. So with this, we come to an end. Let's see the scoreboard. Subhashri is on top, Khushbu, followed by Nisha. Okay, so, just one more question. What is the slogan of the ongoing BCICI Earth Warriors 2020 Challenge Contest? What is the slogan? With great power comes great responsibility. Power saved is commitment points earned. Power saved is money earned. Or power save the world. Oh, power saved is money earned is the right answer. Anyways, let's move to the next. So third is Nisha. Congratulations, CA Nisha. Second is CA Khushbu. Congratulations, CA Khushbu. And the winner is Subhashri. Congratulations, Subhashri. So with this, we come to an end of today's virtual CPE event organized by the women members of the BCI CAI. I would like to thank once again each and every one of you for joining in and making this such a huge success. Till we meet again, bye-bye. Thank you.